maybe I'll throw out an ASMR video, trigger only. Wednesdays is Witchcraft Wednesdays, and Fridays is 5 True Crime Friday. So we get 5 very long true crime bundle that you can watch at once, or you can watch over a period of the week. It is up to you. And then Saturday, I was thinking scary story Saturday. And then Sunday is subscriber Sunday, so whatever. Maybe I'll do a poll or something, or a vote, or maybe have just a, surprise Sunday. You never know what it is. So it could be, from ramble to true crime, to a scary story, to something I've written myself. And if you haven't checked out my own personal writings, it's an interesting story, I think. And then The Man with the Soulless Eyes. Let's begin. So remember, even though it is not real true crime, it is always advisable as to what audiences watch this. So my content, not that it's bad, I keep it pretty PG. So the most famous witches in history. The first one that I have found very interesting over my life. She is from Scotland, and her name is Isabel Gowdy. Now it's interesting because her story takes place in the 7th century Scotland, and she was accused supposedly of willingly confessed to being a witch. Now, however, a lot of people in town had really speculated that she was not mentally well, that she was experiencing psychosis and just not doing well mentally, and she was more coerced and, kind of forced into confessing. So that makes it hard for, historians to determine whether she was really experiencing the effects of being a witch and doing real witchcraft, or was she just experiencing a psychotic break and thought she was, and really she was just stirring a pot and saying some things. So, a woman, a scholar on witchcraft, her name is Emma Wilby. She actually wrote an entire book analyzing Isabel's confessions. Now, her take is that she was a woman who practiced shamanism, and which was carried on from many, many centuries ago. And her life's confessions are more of a complex mental kind of understanding or disassociation of her theories and beliefs of shamanism instead of witchcraft. And you have to remember that many religions practice witchcraft. Now, whether or not they call it witchcraft is a completely different story. But like the medicine man, and if you go to New Orleans and you see a into manifestations, either good or evil. People have used witchcraft, thrown that word around like, cotton candy. And when it comes to blaming the plagues and wars and anything, ships turning over, kings not getting the throne, dynasties overthrown. But honestly, let's be honest, as witches, there's only so much you can really manifest, not being right, next to the person or a part of their lives. So that's my take on it anyway. Jodi, the problem with Jodi is that she had a way of speaking that was almost bard-like, which it is just harsh and kind of strange to most people, I would say. If she did actually confess to these, horrid acts of witchcraft, and they're willing and they're true, she was an exorbitantly talented human being, because what she actually confessed to was crazy acts of witchcraft, turning over ships, stopping or starting wars, plagues. It goes on and on and on. So that was number one, Isabel Jodi. And that was in the 17th century. I just wanted to give a good background before we actually start any cases. So number two, the second most famous witch is Morgan Le Fay. So she's almost like a legend. And some people view her as this very cruel, evil, almost demon-like human being, and others, they look at her as a priestess of Avalon. So her actual existence cannot be proven, but those who believe the Arthurian legend believe in her power. Some Arthurian stories kind of, they minimize and mitigate her allegiance and stories. So, to her brother, twisting all of the things she did into a hateful, vengeful, narcissistic witch. And she wanted to destroy her brother's kingdom. Well, I don't know if that was true or not, but there are legends, and legends come from somewhere. Now, whether it's a way that it kind of gives an out to the person who may not have been right for the throne. That's a lot of this, that when I ever read, I have lots of witchcraft books and about witches, and they've always fascinated me over the years. But a lot of kings have blamed plagues and wars, falling of dynasties, and falling of different power parties, basically, over a witch, that they are so powerful that they can actually manipulate an entire, land of people. Come on. but other legends are different. King Arthur in his dying hour, apparently. In his dying hour, by taking him to Avalon. Or if it truly happened, but modern witches believe in Morgan Le Fay, and that she was famous. She was indeed a witch, and in history might have been a goddess. I don't know about all witches. I think people classify, it's like saying that everybody who believes in that Jesus is the Son of God is the same religion. Catholics, Protestants, Lutherans are all the same religion. If you would tell them that, they would be mortified. So that's kind of how I feel when they kind of group witches into one category. It's really kind of irritating. So there are all sorts of witches, and we'll go over that in maybe next week. The kinds of witches that there are. So number 3 of the most famous witches in the world, in history. Her name was Aradia. And what is she famous for, and where is she from? Well, her history starts in Italy. And she is the main character in Aradia. So in the Gospel of Witches, a book written by Charles Leland in the 19th century, its authenticity, or, trueness, I guess, is that more, is debated. But his book did help fuel reassurance of witchcraft in the 20th century. Charles Leland claimed that the information was given to him by this Madalena, and it was that in this book that Aradia was created. So, according to Charles Leland, Aradia was the daughter of goddess Diana and Lucifer. So, a goddess and a fallen angel, basically. Aradia was a goddess incarnated on earth, similar to a Messiah or Christ. Her followers were a group of witches that has survived since the 12th century. They use witchcraft to fend off the church and keep their ways alive. Now, what they mean by this is that the Parliament had actually, in England, had banned by death, punishable by death, any witches in, I think, 1564, I want to say. And then it was kind of said, okay, well, in 1602, 1603, somewhere around there, it says, well, okay, well, we aren't going to kill them, but we're going to, if they say they have magical powers, then we're going to punish them by putting them in prison and fine them money. Okay. And then eventually, by the 1700s, late 1700s, it was really just kind of let go. So, number 4, Maria Laveau. So, a voodoo queen, Marie Laveau. Marie was born a black woman in New Orleans in the mid-1700s. Now, what is she famous for? Well, she's a voodoo priestess. Remember, I said witchcraft is a lot of different names. Well, voodoo's a different kind of witchcraft. And in Louisiana, and when I lived in Mississippi, and we would visit New Orleans, there are side streets buy you or sell you what you need there. And it is nothing to play around with. I have no desire to find out what it might do. So, now, Marie Laveau, people would come to her for advice, for medical cures, for emotional cures. She did attend mass regularly, yet she was a voodoo priestess and practiced the magical arts. So, let me ask you a question. Do you think that the magical presence is in the church? Do you think that at all? I do. Think about that. If you think about the religions, all of the religions, there is something, even if you read the Bible, there is the good and evil, there are the demons and the gods. There are many, many stories that people don't read or are not aware of in the Bible. It's actually quite an interesting book to just read through from front to back. So, now the New Orleans Society is a little bit more forgiving. You have to remember that even though they were kind of, it's more of a very hippie, what's the word I'm looking for? Transient kind of gypsy lifestyle. You go downtown and you can have your palm read in the square, and I mean it is a very deep rooted in witchcraft and voodoo place. I'm not sure how, I guess, because it would have to go back to the settling of Louisiana. That's what I think, and all the violence that went in there and the different people that were there. So Marie Laveau, a famous witch in history, she lived well into her 90s, and she would give magical spells to people. She would teach classes at New Orleans Society about magical spells. And her grave is in New Orleans, St. Louis Cemetery, number 1. It gets more visitors on Halloween than Elvis Presley's. So this famous witch has been a priestess, a voodoo queen, a healer, a therapist, a kind of a medical doctor in some ways of herbs. But she was a very wise woman, and she knew how to handle her craft. What she practiced. She didn't use it for evil. She used it to help, and she didn't make a spectacle of herself, which a lot of witches that have become famous do. So, number 5, the Witch of Endor. So, in biblical times, perhaps the absolute most famous witch in ancient history is the Witch of Endor. And you will hear about her in the book of Samuel, in the 28th chapter. So King Saul apparently called on her to raise the prophet Samuel's spirit from the dead to advise him in battle. Now, anytime you raise the dead, I do not think that's a good idea, personally. But he was having such a particularly difficult time defeating the Philistines that all attempts to summon Samuel's spirit through me people have a hard time mixing their religion with something that they feel is from an evil place, when witchcraft is not. It just is not, with every religion, with every practice of anything, with magic or, energy healing, there can be negative and positives of both. I don't care. I don't care what religion it is. So, I mean, you can use it to manipulate and hurt people, or you can use it for good and to heal people. So, number 6, the witch. The next on our list, Anne Boleyn. So, this is a woman who is the second wife of King Henry VIII of England. Now, this is back in the 16th century. So many professors, scholars, writers believed that she was not a witch. But again, it depends on your own personal affliction or feelings or definitions of what a witch is. She liked to engulf herself in mystical practices, and she took on the advisement of a magical practitioner. And what does that mean, a magical practitioner? Now, was it a practitioner that would help her eat better, feel better, and they just called it potions? I don't know. But throughout the years, as she became Queen of England, Anne Boleyn became very educated. She was extremely intelligent and a woman of power, which gave her kind of one up on other witches, because she was very intelligent and she could talk her way in or out of a situation, and she had a very powerful position. So despite these, rumors and horrific pointing the finger kind of gossipy little ninnies, saying that she was, participating in treason, adultery, incest, and witchcraft, and it led to her beheading, unfortunately. So she is one of the most influential queens and witches in history. Very brilliant, but she was beheaded, unfortunately, because, one person is like mass hysteria. One person sees or hears something about somebody else, and it just becomes like a spitfire. Where that little match that lights a very, that takes down millions and millions of acres, from one cigarette or whatever. That's kind of what happened here. So number 7, Grigory Rasputin. So, you know the movie, of course, Anastasia. Do you know that it is based on a true story about the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas Romanov II, and the last surviving family member, the Princess Anastasia. So, in the movie, of course, the evil antagonist is the Romanov dynasty, and the man that's named, Grigory Rasputin. But in reality, Rasputin was close to the royal family and claimed it was was his fault that the Romanovs were assassinated and the dynasty fell. He admitted that. So he was, accused of black magic, using witchcraft for evil and awful things. But he claimed to be a very religious and good man in God's service, and in his honor, he would go down in history as the most famous witch, whether it's true or not. And here, I think, just a bad, like I said, people like to back then blame witches for really horrific events like a dynasty falling or the end of an era or a plague or a king's boat overturning or ship overturning, whatever, or losing a lot of money or droughts. They would just blame witches for that because, of course, witches want to live in misery. That really never made sense to me. But it's interesting. And as we go along. So number 8 in the countdown. Alison Device is one of the most infamous accused witches. Now, she came from England in the Pendle witch trials in 1612. So she confessed to many counts of witchcraft. And she was said that she hurt a family, she would hurt her enemies with this charming milk that she would make into butter, and she would kill children. I don't know, a lot of this sounds very coerced to me. And out of this story is very intriguing to many today, even. There's a statue of one of the Pendle witches standing in Rogley, honoring those accused. So, now, I know many people know this witch because of the Salem witch trials. Now this, I believe, was more, not that there wasn't witchcraft going on, however, I think that it was more mass hysteria, and then once the girls got out of control, they had nowhere to go, so they just started pointing fingers, and they did not care. So number 9, Tipua. Oh yes, Tipua, the most famous of all the witch trials in history, of course, are the Salem witch trials in America. There have been thousands of movies and books and shows and TV shows and DVDs. You can go on and find so many different accounts of this. It was just horrific. I don't even think if the people they killed were even the witches, to be honest with you. I think that the kids just started acting strange, and for some reason, Tituba was, she was from, Barbados, which was a foreign land to these people, and they just, immediately, because she had a little bit different view on religion, and it wasn't their view. Remember, they were Quakers, and very Puritans, very, was a slave. Some say Native American, others say African, or combination, in the confessions to making witch cakes, quote unquote, and in knowing magical practices, and knowing so many spells and ways to, they said they caught her in the woods with the girls and she had been out of her body and eyes were rolling back in her head and all this stuff, but she had been known to know magical practices of protection against evil from her time living in Barbados. No one knows exactly what happened to Digiba, because she disappears from the records after the trials. So people believe that she was purchased as a slave by another family, but I don't know. I think that she probably disappeared for her own well-being. I don't think it would have been positive for her to stay there. She did end up just saying, yes, I'm a witch, just because that is how the Puritans and Quakers dealt with witches. They said, well, just admit that you are and God will forgive you, and pledge your allegiance to God. Okay, she said. The people, it really is heartbreaking, and it was a tragedy that the people that were so committed to the religion and to the community, and had always been really, really good people, they would not admit that they were witches because they would rather die than be accused of something that they were not. They were not going to lie just to lie. And I have to respect that. So on her way up the ladder is Gerald Gardner. So he's considered the father of modern witchcraft. Why? He is actually the founder of Wicca. So his story, how does it go? Well, he was shown the old ways of witchcraft by a coven in New Forest. So he decided to keep the religion alive by making it public knowledge and kind of bringing it into the modern world. So, he was faulted for and accused of, not practicing good witchcraft, I guess, of course, and, putting spells on people. And many Wiccans and pagans alike are able to come out of the broom closet today without fear of being hanged, or guillotined, at least partly because of Gardner. So, he did a lot to open up people's minds about Wicca and the religion of pagans go back a long thousands of years. It was really when the kings started to accuse, and really when the Greeks started to form this, witches are bad people, but if you really look at Greek mythology, it was more manipulation and kind of trickery than it was witchcraft. But anyway, we'll get into that another time. So number 11 is Sybil Leek. So Sybil Leek was taught witchcraft at a young age and was practicing during Gerald Gardner's time. So she's one of the most famous witches today. And she has written many well-known occult books such as Diary of a Witch, Sybil Leek's Book of Herbs, Star Peak, Your Body Language from the Stars. Sybil claims that she taught herself about witchcraft by Aleister Crowley. So she was supposed to be the successor until he went down a darker path, and she was not gonna follow. She, like I said, any religion, you can go one way or another. psychic, and she was known to keep a pet jackdaw, and she died in the 1980s, actually. Quote, as Britain's most famous witch, unquote, living in Florida at the time. Her book, Diary of a Witch, was influential to many modern witches and today's society of witches. Now, in today's society, I do want to say this, is that there are a lot of covens as time went on. There were covens early on, and then there was this like accusations of individuals doing horrible things, and then now in today's society there is more covens and groups, and I mean there are also single witches, yes, but it's more of a, you know, a practice to keep yourself well and the people around you well. You know, they practice good, you know, positive spells that, you know, help heal the earth, help heal the soul, things like that. So on our way up the ladder is Lori Cabot. So she is the official witch of Salem, quote unquote. She is the most famous witch of today, in my opinion. She writes books. She is very intelligent, and she really owns her witchcraft. She has had a shop in Salem for many years, and I've actually been there. And she records videos on her YouTube channel. She's very interesting. She's helped aid the police in murder cases. She's taught college classes on the occult. So if you ever get a chance to read her book, Power of the Witch, get an understanding as to Cabot's, you know, ubiquitous wisdom. Now here's the thing, is that she is, I wouldn't say so much of a witch in per se. She's more of a psychic and has a gift that can help people, and she's done a good job in, you know, using it to teach and help those. So number 13, Scott Cunningham. Now, I've never really heard of him. Now, he considers himself a Wiccan, which is kind of like a snotty witch, I always say. I don't know, you know, there is kind of like this debate is whether Wiccans and pagans, like they feel like pagans are the outcasts, or the people that don't want to follow the Wiccan policies or their culture. So they just kind of, you know, grouped paganism, you know, into this one lump sum. And so for personal and spiritual reasons, he writes many books on the various topics of Wicca, such as kitchen witchcraft, magical herbs, stones, earth power, basically the energy. He passed away in 1993, so there will not be any more books written by him, but it is a more clearly defined, I guess, religion, if you want to call it that, or understanding of how to harness the earth's energy, which I think as the world goes on, people, you know, witches, that's what we're trying to do. Harness the earth's energy, not destroy it. So number 14. So Doreen Valente wrote a few books. Witchcraft for Tomorrow, ABC of Witch, The Charge of the Goddess. She wrote many Gerald Gardner's books of shadows and worked with Robert Cochrane and the clan of Duquesne for a period but she did a lot of good in that time. So, number 15, Rosalie Norton. She's a very famous witch. I've heard of her. I'm sure many people have. She has been known as Witch of King's Cross. She is from Australia, and she was known for wild paintings of God and demons. She started her own coven, the Goat Fold, in the mid-20th century. She's influenced more by the dark side of magic, but she wasn't a Satanist at all. She was a pantheist. So it's difficult for people to separate her dark artwork from her religious claims. She's very provocative in her art, and she does have, her artwork will go on display from time to time in Sydney, even to this day. Now, it's interesting because sometimes witches will seem to be dark people, but yet not practice dark art of witchcraft. Does that make sense? Just because they have some darker thoughts, or that's the problem with being an artist, is that you let yourself go and then people can interpret it any way they want. And number 16, Alex Sanders. So he's famous for, he was the founder of the Alexandrian Wicca Foundation. He's an established Wiccan, obviously, the offshoots of the traditional, Cartarian Wicca. So he's famous from the 60s to 70s. He was on talk shows and did many interviews for documentaries and investigations. And he claims that he was the king of the witches. So he was also married to, I'm sure you guys know, Maxine Sanders. So much to the dismay of a few prominent Cartarian Wiccan members, including Patricia Crowther. Sanders was one of those people. You either loved him or hated him. But he was a high priestess of his own tradition, and I don't think he cared at all. And of course, there's always controversy surrounding the life of a witch, especially a man witch, when they kind of put themselves out there as a high priest, basically making him I don't say anything rude, but just like making him, he's putting himself into a high status that really I don't think anybody should be able to put themselves into, personally. So of course we've all, number 17, have heard of the Bell Witch. It is actually not a witch at all. Did you know that it was a poltergeist, or is considered a poltergeist? I don't know if this is true or not, but it is a terrifying, frightening account. Started in the 1800s in Tennessee. It was a family with the last name of Bell. The Bell family was apparently tormented by a disembodied voice with a spirit that could cause literal physical harm, which is very rare. Usually that is a demon. So the haunting was very famous and known nationwide. I mean, the Bell Witch is, very famous. But who was the Bell Witch? Was she a demon? Was she a witch? Was she a poltergeist? Was she a manifestation of all of these negative energies? There are many theories behind her. A local she felt that the property that she lived on was stolen by John Bell. So the patriarch of the Bell family, who was John Bell, and sought revenge by sending her astral doubles, so her doppelganger, to torment and terrify the Bell family. I don't know about that. But I do know that a lot of negative feelings can manifest very, very bad things, and I've seen it myself, so just be careful. So we all know of the Blair Witch Project, especially my age group. This is number 18. There was actually the Blair Witch, who is another legend. And, you know, some people believe in her, some people don't. But she was a witch of Maryland. Maybe you've seen the movie The Blair Witch Project in the 90s. You either loved it or hated it. I thought it was kind of goofy, but locals in Burkittsville, Maryland, claim the movie was based off of a local legend that was true. The witch actually lived in the woods in Burkittsville and in the 1800s. So now the witch is a ghost that still haunts the area. And you can always look up the Blair Witch online. And I may do, you know, an in-depth search on all of these. I just wanted to go over the basics of the most famous witches, because I knew that many of these would ring a bell in your head, and I think that's more interesting when you know of, you know, something like, well, did you know that George Washington thought he was cursed by Muldraughtire? Well, that is number 19 on the list. But these sources who had said this, that Muldraughtire was just a woman who lived close to Leonardtown. So again, in Maryland in the 1600s. So the family, the Dyers, they'd been living there for 400 years. And my ex-husband is actually raised in Maryland. And Leonardtown is a very interesting place. So it's an interesting source, and it's of information if you go to this little town, and it's a place where, you know, it's kind of a place, it earns some money based upon the witch history. So the problem is that, you know, people like to sensationalize things, and Mo was blamed for the local settlement's harsh winter. There are other problems. A mob even went to her home in the middle of the night, set it on fire, and drove her into the cold. She died. She was frozen like a rock. And the legend goes that there is actually a rock that sits in the Historical Society at the St. Mary's County that is said to be Muldraughtire. You know, it's so interesting how, even in true crime, how things can get out of control, how rumors can start, and the person that it is about has no clue as to what people are talking about, because it's not true, and it just, even true to this day. I do, you know, kids that kill especially, you know, wow, just erratic the kids can be. The Fisher wife of Palermo in the Sicilian witch trials. There was a woman who was called the Fisher wife of Palermo. She's accused of witchcraft, of course, and consorting with the Donos de Fuera, or the fairies. Now, fairies is an interesting concept. Some witches believe in them and others do not. They can be evil, they can be mischievous, they can be like little kind of nuisances, but most of all, they are not very polite. Like the fairy that we see on Disney, they are not nice at all. So, a strange turn of events, she tells these people that she goes to a magical island, pledging her loyalty to these fairies when she was a young child of only 9 years old. So her tale seems a little too, sensational to believe, and the court dismissed it as a dream. So she stayed free. But, a lot of times, it's just like with true crime as well. People will say they are one thing to get attention. And I think that's really what happened with the Salem witch trials, is that these girls wanted attention. And I think they just, ran crazy with it. Number 21, Giles Corey. So he's from the Salem witch trials. And he is probably the most famous of the witches from the witch trials. So what makes him so infamous? Unfortunately, many people were accused that were completely innocent and didn't practice magic of any kind whatsoever. Matter of fact, they were good citizens. They went to church, they paid their taxes, they were good people. So, why? What about Giles Corey? He was accused of witchcraft and then pressed to death with rocks in order for the officials to obtain a confession, of which they never received, and he died. I don't know. I think that maybe he had some guilt there for something. I think there was some infidelity going on. I don't know. The Salem witch trials were so convoluted in many, many ways, not just with the witches. I think that was just a manifestation of all of these suspicions of who was with who, what was going on. They were having a terrible year. They were having a drought. Things weren't going well. It was cold. The winter just kept going on, and they almost needed something to do. Not that killing a bunch of people is something to do, but an idle mind is the devil's playground. I don't know. So number 22, Shirley Jackson. So she is an author, and she is rumored to be a witch, and yes, she's still alive. And her husband stands behind her, and he's also, had admitted that she is into mythical topics and practices, but she herself never says that, which I respect. So, if you ever read The Haunting of Hill House, or if you've ever seen the movie or TV series, which I have, it's very interesting. Apparently this is based on her work, and you'll know just how magical this woman truly was. Interesting fact, she has always lived in the castle. And she is another one of Jackson's magical pieces adapted to a Netflix family. I'd never heard of her. I mean, I know about Hill House, but I didn't know it was her creation and that she was actually a witch, but that could be completely kind of manifested to get the movie going. Now, I do believe in this, and for many reasons. Bathsheba Sherman seen The Conjuring, you know how horrific she is. But here's the thing, that if you ever really read into the famous Rhode Island haunting and how this family is tormented, and they had to call on basically exorcists or ghost specialists and demonologists to help them get rid of this demon. She was a demon. She had possessed the woman of the land, and she had given herself up to Satan, and her firstborn she actually had taken and killed in front of her husband, and forever was, and then went out and hung herself up at the tree in the front yard. And really just, there were so many accounts of these strange deaths of people disappearing on the land that she owned originally, that it is really quite interesting if you look at the facts around Bathsheba in Rhode Island, and very scary. So, you know, probably the story is not quite as intense, obviously, as the movie. But Mrs. Warren made sure that when she produced her Conjuring movies, that she was there to make sure that no lies or not too much sensationalism was put into the movies, and I respect that. She died not that long ago, when she was in her 80s, after her husband, which was really sad. They were a good couple, and she was extremely talented as far as her psychic abilities. She was called on. They were the only people used by the Catholic Church to actually go and investigate these strange occurrences to see if they were real or not. So that tells you a lot about how, you know, the Warrens were really the real deal. You don't see that a lot. And a lot of times they would say, well, this place is not haunted, I'm sorry. It's just the wind or whatever. So number 24, Christopher Penczak, modern witch and author. Well, I've never heard of him, but he is widely known through the Temple of the Pagan community. So he has written The Inner Temple of Witchcraft and The Outer Temple of Witchcraft. So Penczak isn't just knowledgeable in magical arts, but is also in healing arts, and has written a very good book on Reiki called, I have read this actually, The Magic of Reiki, and that is definitely worth checking out. That's a great book, because I believe in Reiki healing. Absolutely. The power of witchcraft is not in the spells necessarily. It's harnessing the earth's energy to heal and help others. Heal and help others. So number 25. This is our last most famous witch. Doreen Virtue. So she's also very controversial. She was Christian and she turned witch. And then she was a witch and she turned to Christianity again. So her name creates a lot of irritation in the modern witchcraft community, because she claimed to be a witch and mystic for many years, and she got very wealthy on it. She sold thousands of angel oracle cards, mystical books, and then she turns around and claims in recent years that her past work was the devil's. But she used angels and positive things, so I'm not sure. I don't know. Apparently somebody got to her. So she turned to Christianity, denounced her metaphysical work, and then vice versa. Well, I'm sorry, first vice versa, and then back to Christianity. And this really pissed off the community. And, you know, they don't recognize her as a witch. And if she doesn't want to be, she doesn't. But she is very well known as kind of a fake, I think. I think she did it to make money, and then, I don't know, wanted to improv. I don't know. Because she wasn't, you know, angel oracle cards, mystical books, and then all of that is the devil's work. Well, I don't think so. I mean, I just think that's strange and bizarre. You know, these are just the basics, but there are some really old witches that I am researching through my family. It's just getting a hold of them and getting all of the information that I actually need to provide you with the most intriguing stories of all. Of course, we'll do the Salem witch trials, but there was actually many witch trials that people are not aware of that have been going on for many years, and like there are different types of practices and use of magical elements that are very interesting, and I think that's what I find fascinating, especially if you go back in time. I mean, witchcraft is one of the oldest forms of religion, but healing and helping people, and just trying to get the earth's energy to work cohesively together to create a outcome that is desirable. And then, of course, there's always the other side, where people take it to an extreme and a very negative perspective. And that is, you know, in any religion, a lot of deaths have been, probably the most murders have been in the name of religion, or because you don't agree with somebody's religion that they kill you, or you're hung at the stake, or burned at the stake, or, you know, you're beheaded, especially back before modern times. I mean,